Welcome to the Writing Community Chat Show. Hi guys, welcome to this Writing Community Chat Show episode. It's fantastic to be here. It's fantastic to engage with you guys. It's very exciting, and we've got another great guest for you. It's a fantastic week for us with guests, and we can't wait to get into this show. Chris Hooley is sat by my side as always. Hello to you, Chris.
Hello.
I was very interested in doing that little impression, and there was a little conversation before we came on air about wonky mouths, and we'll leave it there. But it was funny, and Chris, do you want to do an impression of that?
I don't know what you're talking about. Right?
Yep, didn't happen. Anyway, it's
don't know
great
what
to see
you're talking about.
Thank you for engaging on the chat already, guys. Please send your questions in throughout. Enjoy the chat, enjoy each other's company. And if you're listening back to this, thank you very much. And if you're watching back, then hello to you as well. How's your week been, Chris? What's been going on? Any news?
Yeah, someone called Megan has invaded my house. She seems to be on every screen that my girlfriend watches, so I'm getting pretty fed up with that, to be honest.
Okay, and now I've got... yeah, I get what you're saying.
I was fed up, sure.
Well, I've done fantastically well to avoid all of these things, except for... Yeah.
See, I thought I was doing that. I was reading my books, going about my business, and then she just appears everywhere.
Well, indeed. I think we should avoid that conversation, but I don't know. There's a lot of these American people in the audience for us, so let us know your thoughts on that. Actually, because
we have no thoughts. We are impartial.
Impartial thoughts. But however, as an American person, what do you think of the royals? I mean, is it a good thing, bad thing, modern or outdated? I don't know. Let us know. First thing I've got to mention though, Chris, the Page Turner Awards. If you remember back, we had the director Paula. The Page Turner Awards came on the show and explain how amazing these awards are, and there's some fantastic awards for indie authors, from mentorship to audiobook development to program development to everything you can imagine. Prizes that will
surprisingly there's not an award for turning a page.
There's not, but you can literally
be very good at that.
Yes, we are good. Boost your career by winning one of these awards, right? So it's certainly worth doing, and it closes in May. So I think the entry fees were around £20, which isn't massive, but the rewards were enormous. So please check out the Page Turner Awards on the internet and go and have a look at the categories. You can even submit unfinished works, so do that, please. Other thing I want to mention very quickly before we get on to the sponsors and the guests, International Women's Day. In fact, International's Women's Month in March, so we want to celebrate women's achievements. We very much back that. We want equality across the board, absolutely. So happy Women's Day, 8th of March, and month really in March. So
we've had some amazing women on the show. There's too many for me to remember, but obviously we've got Kristen Bailey, CJ Shooter, just loads. So if you go back, look through the show, and you want to read a book this month to celebrate International Women's Month, then I highly recommend all the authors that we've had on the show.
Yeah, Mario says, yay, women, indeed. Okay, so Beer Book Token this week, Chris. I've decided to be a little selfish. It's not selfish, but I'm sponsoring today's show for two reasons. First reason, I was very, very busy this week, and we didn't get the tweets out in time to get the sponsors in.
Ooh.
My bad. Secondly...
That's not good, sure.
It's not good. But secondly, being Women's Month, as you know, my story is very much about a young woman going through very troubled times, as is our guest book. So it kind of links in very, very well. So I have sponsored today's show, hoping to add to the fun for when we go on to the Harrogate Crime Festival, Chris Hooley. That will help. So my book... Again, this is a shameless plug. I'll give it out there. Deep the Climb of Truth and Deep the Embers of Life, a little novellas series, is very cheap. As cheap as you can get it on Amazon. It's got good ratings, and it's the story of a young woman who must escape a crumbling city.
Surely you don't need to read it.
I know. I was just looking
at mate. You did write this thing.
I was just making sure that was my own work, yeah. So she's got a lot going on, and she goes through... she basically has to hold on to her innocence as a lot happens around her, and the city crumbles and all that stuff. Please check that out, because I'm supporting the show. like all the other authors do. And I'll put that up there, Chris, for you, because I know you love a book cover. And you can see both my covers up there, look. So book 1 and 2. Nice. Shameless plug. I feel very embarrassed.
Did you design that yourself?
I did indeed. Yes, thank you. Cool.
Got skills, good.
So let's get on with today's guest, because I'm sure I just bored the crap out of you. Anyway, so today's guest, there's the cover, Chris. His debut book, The Last Book You Read and Other Stories, was described as by the Times as the most compelling Scottish literary debut since Trainspotting, which is a massive statement. Ian Rankin spoke about his latest book by saying, "I wasn't sure there could be a great pandemic novel. Here it is. That book is How to Survive Everything." Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome Ewan Morrison.
Hello. Greetings.
How are you doing?
Not too bad, Chris and CJ. How are you?
We're good, and we're very, very appreciative of you coming on the show, and it's very good to see you here. So I hope all is well.
Yeah. You've got better lockdown beards than me. I see. I've done something funny on this side here when I was shaving today. So apologies for that weird bit of facial hair turbulence there.
Oh, nice.
Facial hair turbulence. I like it.
It's strange. It's like a kind of ha. Anyway. Onto the serious stuff.
I think you've come to the wrong show. No, honestly, it's great to have you here, despite any facial hair malfunctions. But we couldn't tell until you mentioned it. So,
and we still can't tell, because you're an amazing looking fellow.
It's wow. There you go. Don't hear
full
that
compliments on this show. The first thing we love to do is jump into a history about why you've done what you do and all of that sort of stuff. But very kindly, you sent us the trailer to your book, so I really want to shoot that out there first and play that. Do you have any objection to that?
I would love that. I'm very proud of that little trailer. Yeah.
Good. So we're going to play the trailer for Ewan's new book now. Have a little look at it, and then when we talk about that, it might make some more context there, which Chris Hooley is proudly displaying there. So here we come.
Human beings can survive for about 40 days without food, for about 3 days without water, for about 8 minutes without air. But they can't live for 1 single second without hope. That's what my dad taught us. He said we had to be prepared for what was coming. He said it was better to be 10 years too early than 1 minute too late. That's why he did what he did on that morning.
There it is. How to Survive Everything. That is a fantastic trailer, which is being echoed through the chat right now.
Fabulous.
Fabulous.
Yeah.
So before we delve into that story, let's delve into your background, and then people will be hanging on to want to know what that's about, a bit more about it. So, Ewan, how did writing become something in your life, and where did that come from?
It was a really ramshackle thing. So I started off being a kind of one of these outsider kids who's like, you know, so many artists and writers and stuff and actors are like, oh, I was bullied, you know, Joaquin Phoenix or whatever. And you know, all of the, this is usually a story of being an early outsider. So I learned to make little plasticine models when I was a kid, obsessive little behavior. And I won like the second prize in the National Plasticine Model Making Competition, which for our American friends is Play-Doh. So that was the sort of beginning of the creative thing. And then I went to art school, and I went to art school to be a painter and a sculptor and everything. And I arrived, I mean, basically it's a series of disasters and bad timing that led me finally to being a writer. So I arrived at art school just at the time when being a painter was really, really, really uncool. So it was like, okay, I'm a postmodernist now. I'll have to deconstruct the traditions of, you know, patriarchal image making, and what shall I do? So that led me to making little anti-narrative films. Nice. And then that led me to making narrative films. I'm working in telly for quite a while, actually. Was working on a little arts program. I used to bend the arm of the folk who were working there to let me do things like, can I do an interview with Sonic Youth, please? They're in town. And so, yeah, we had a pretty cool thing going for a while. And then some friend said to me, look, you're wasting your time doing this. What are you doing this for? You're a creative person. You should be on the other side of the camera. So I started making some short films. They did quite well. And then again, disaster struck. I went off to New York with it was a company that just set up. It decided to revolutionize cinema, make it all digital. They were going to have, they bought like lots of cinema chains and everything, and they installed the latest sort of satellite laser technology to project everything. And they had a deal with, what's his name, who made Star Wars, the big guy.
Oh, Lucas. Yeah.
His name somehow escaped me. Yes. So they had a deal with George Lucas, and George Lucas was going to beam the first of the prequels only through their cinema chain.
Wow.
And then all the other cinema chains and the makers of celluloid film clubbed together and said, George, you do that, we won't speak to you ever again, and you won't get a product. So the company I worked for went bust.
Wow.
And I came back to Britain. I thought, oh, God, 15 years of creative endeavor wasted. Am I a painter? Am I a writer? Am I a plasticine model maker? Am I a filmmaker? And I just sat down and wrote my little heart out for a couple of months. I was also going through a hefty divorce at the time as well. So it was kind of writing. It was amazing to write and just to think, my God, I don't have to get this past a producer or a production company or get financing. It's like, there it is. It's done, you know. It's printed out and it's finished. And that was amazing. So it just really came from there. And over the years, I guess I've dug into my core themes, which we can talk about more. I think that's the way to keep going as a writer, is to really find out what your core themes are.
Amazing. Nice. So at the point when you kind of thought that these avenues you were going down was kind of what you should be doing, was there the idea of writing as a backup there already, or was it something that just became?
Well, it was one of these things. And when moving back from New York after my big failure, I realized I had to get all my possessions down to almost nothing. And I realized that the most important thing for me was not all the books I'd collected and the furniture and the clothes. It was a stack of diaries and notebooks I'd been carrying around for a decade. And looking back through them, I'd actually been a writer without realizing it. I'd been just creating this series of observations about people, characters, moments, and it's all in there, really. So, I mean, I really kind of backed myself into being a writer. I had no intention to be a professional writer from the start, which is kind of nice in a way.
So, Ewan, how has that writing process changed then from when you first started out and you thought, do you know what, I'm going to write this novel, I'm going to write a novel, I've decided, to now? Obviously, you've written multiple novels now. So has that process changed at all?
That's a good question, because I started off with that original fire of discovery of like, you know, stay up all night. I'll stay up all night. I'll type like mad. And I'm so tired the next day. I can't work. And maybe I'll go to a party or drink something, and maybe that'll inspire me. And, you know, at the start, it's a mess, you know, or it was for me. So then over the years, I think after about book 3, I decided I'm going to actually work out a discipline here. So I'm one of these people who's better in the afternoons and the evenings. So I do my creative work then, and in the morning, I'd like in notepads or bits of paper or anything to get away from the computer. And then in the morning, I transcribe what I did the day before. So I've got like left brain, right brain. You know, you should see me in the mornings. I can't write fiction for crap, because I like basically evolved from the status of like a single-celled amoeba to you know, Cro-Magnon man over about 3 hours, and then it's by the afternoon that I'm able to speak properly. My wife even noticed that I speak more slowly in the mornings. So trying to write means I write more slowly. So I just worked out there's no point trying to write in the mornings.
Yeah. So are you all is it all hand scribed and then typed up, or do you sort of mix it up a little bit?
You know, the thing is never to get bored, even though you've got routine, never to get too routine in your routine. So for me, I have little notepads and big notepads, and I have the laptop for working on in bed, and then you know, the laptop to take around the house. It's kind of tricking yourself into being spontaneous, you know. But the main thing is to get away from the fear of this big white screen that's in front of us. You know, oh my God, you know, 300 pages of stuff that need editing, you know. So breaking things down into little chunks is great when you've got a master plan, you know, if you have a master plan.
Well, nice. Mario in the chat said he loves the idea of core themes that you mentioned earlier. Do you want to go into a bit more detail about that?
It's one of these things. I think you almost need to take yourself and your books to a therapist. You know, if you were, you know, really, if you were to take all your short stories and your books to a therapist, your therapist would go, "Oh, you're a bit preoccupied with your mother," you know, or you know, you've got serious persecution paranoia, which is one of my big themes. You know, so it's only really after writing probably 3 or 4 books that I realized what the common themes were, and they're generally about. Guess what? They're about outsider kids who don't really fit in with the outside world, who try some sort of maverick way to make a life for themselves. It's also interesting that enough. It was actually a therapist that said this to me. You know, your worst fear it seems to be losing the plot. I'm like, my character is afraid of losing the plot. As in, are they afraid of losing meaning in their lives and direction? And I think that's a huge theme in my book. So it just comes back on a subconscious level. If I was too conscious of it from the start, I would probably end up illustrating it, and that wouldn't be so good. So it's good to sort of operate on the subconscious level. I mean, I pretty much everything I write is going to come down to paranoid obsessiveness at some point. You know, there's always a character who's a paranoid obsessive, like the father in How to Survive Everything.
I was just going to mention that, because obviously that story involves the father as a character that takes Haley, the main character, into that situation, and because he's a prepper, right? He's an apocalypse survivalist, you could say, someone who's been preparing for potential collapse of civilization for a long time. So it's set in 2025. So he was someone who lost the plot in the pandemic that we're in just now. And you know, sadly, we do know people that are like that. And we've all been struggling with mental health a bit. So Ed, Haley's father, ended up getting himself divorced because he had a massive nervous breakdown, and he became kind of a conspiracy theorist, one of these people who think, oh COVID-19 was caused by a man-made virus, and an even bigger man-made virus is going to wipe out civilization. So that's basically his thing. So he's been prepping for 5 years, and creating this bunker in the middle of nowhere, this hideaway house that he steals his son and daughter away to on a weekend when they have a sleepover. Could have picked better weekends.
That's right.
So Ewan, how much like research did you do for this book, or was it that a fun element, like looking into conspiracy theories and stuff like that before you started writing, or did the character sort of come fully formed?
It's one of these things where I think I've been hooked on conspiracy theories myself for years. I mean, let's not get into a debate as to whether man walked on the moon, because so many people will not like me after we go into details about crosshairs and shadows and stuff. But one of the little problems have been brought up in a really kind of obsessive and quite apocalyptic family, which I was that we were all kind of drawn in different directions to different kind of conspiracy theories and paranoid worldviews. So Ed's been floating around in my head for a long time, but it was really only when when my wife and I wrote the script for American Blackout, which was a National Geographic TV event. One of those things. It was to launch season 2 of Doomsday Preppers. we got a ton of terrifying research through from like the CDC, the Center of Collapse Studies in Columbia, and that freaked us both out completely. So Ed really emerged this. He was someone who absorbed all of that information and turned it into a terrifying collapse theory. And also, as a divorced man, he had. Have you seen Tom Cruise, War of the Worlds? There's a fantastic, father redeems himself by saving his kids, divorced deadbeat dad. So there's a big bit of that in the character of Ed as well.
So, Ewan, how much of yourself is actually in your characters? Are you someone who tries to imprint a little bit of yourself in every character, or do you like to be vastly different from how you are?
I think it happens anyway. So the protagonist, Haley, as a teenager, she's stuck between two divorced parents. My parents weren't divorced, but my sister and I used to have meetings to try to get our parents to divorce. I grew up being unable to make decisions about things. As a teenager, I felt it was really oppressive to have to make decisions. To choose whether you're going to do this or you're going to do that, you're going to be this or you're going to be that. It's pretty crippling. So I thought I'm going to give Haley that horrible paradox. Sorry, not paradox. That horrible choice that she has to deal with. So she calls herself a bit Hamlet-ish. So she's prone to procrastination and unable to make decisions, which is really awful given the story that she's in, because she's caught between a worldview of her mother that thinks, there's no deadly pandemic happening, Waitrose is still open, the sales are on in the shopping mall, and your dad's had a nervous breakdown. And the father who thinks, well, your mother has just put her head in the sand, she's one of the sheeple who has never paid any attention to politics, and she's going to die in the cities. When the shit hits the fan. So Haley's stuck in the middle between those two parents. And I just thought it was like a huge kind of extrapolation of my own inability to make any choices when I was a teenager.
Why did you decide to go with Haley as your sort of main character? Out of just curiosity that it wasn't, say, a child of the opposite sex in that respect?
Well, it was just that I didn't really want to plagiarize my own family, because I've got an elder. When I started writing it in 2013 with a different apocalypse in mind, my son was about 16 then, and my daughter's 3 years younger. My son's 22 now. So at the time I thought, I don't really want to have a 16-year-old son and a 16-year-old male protagonist, because one, he's going to read it and go, "Dad, you ripped me off."
I want royalties.
Yeah, totally. He could do. In fact, my daughter probably will. And I just thought there was something more playfully awful as well about being the older sister who takes care of a younger brother. They're both, what do they call themselves? Divorcelings. So they both adapted to divorce in very different ways. So Haley's little brother, Ben, he's found that divorce is great because he gets twice of everything. Two sets of Christmas presents. Anytime he demands something from one parent, the other parent will try to outbid the first parent to get it. So it's, and he ends up with 2 new phones rather than 1. But Haley's the opposite. So she's, terrified of offending either parent.
So for someone that wants to write in this sort of area, kind of very similar to the way I did as well, a young teenage girl, what advice would you give them how to deal with different and complex situations while writing in a character of that sort of age, perhaps in the opposite sex as well?
I think there's something really useful about the unreliable narrator trope. So if you're writing in it's harder probably to write in the third person, easier to write through the first person. And a good first person is really hard to write properly. So I studied and studied Catcher in the Rye just to get Holden Caulfield. So I noticed that as a teenager, Holden Caulfield uses a lot of compression when he's talking. He doesn't talk about all the beats. He always tells you as well what his view is on what he's talking about. So it's very different from the third person, which is quite neutral.
Okay.
So you end up having an opinionated protagonist who doesn't really know what's going on. So in a sense, you've got to plot the story in the back of your head and then bring in your protagonist as a sort of participant who's not entirely aware of the world. So then it's great for the reader because they get to read between the lines, and there's so many bits. Yeah, unreliable first person character. It's fantastic as a style to work in. It's the second book I've done using this, and it's very addictive. And great fun to read. It's quite challenging sometimes because you've got to fill in the blanks. And you've got to go, oh, hold on, that unreliable narrator's not quite aware of what's going on here. You know, it can be quite funny as well.
So you and if we just take you back to when you, because I was really interested, obviously, with the themes in How to Survive Everything, and you've talked obviously about divorce, and your writing actually started when you were going through a divorce yourself. Yeah. Did you see that as a bit of like therapy, and now that you're far enough away from it, now you're actually able to write about it and reflect on that?
It took a good 10 years to write about it. Yeah, absolutely. Because it was such a kind of core disturbance. I mean, it's the great example of losing the plot. You invest in a big narrative for your life. You know, it's a life narrative, and then it's shattered, and you're left with all these little bits and pieces of narrative to get through the day. When you're, I mean, I was seriously depressed after I was divorced as well. Yeah, sometimes it does take a bit of time and a bit of perspective and a bit of maybe even studying and thinking about these kind of subjects. So I wouldn't tackle anything that was too immediate to me as I was going through it, because I think it would be messy and emotionally messy to to write. If you're injured and then you start writing about being injured straight away, it might not be the best thing to do.
Bit of trauma,
you'd be writing from within the trauma rather than from a more safe position where you can reflect compassionately on it. I think that's the thing.
Yeah, definitely.
Sorry, just reading the comments. So what is there to come? What's the next step in your sort of work then? Because I believe How to Survive Everything is your 8th book. Is that your 8th release now?
Yes.
So will you think that you're going to stay along the themes, like you mentioned, that your sort of core themes follow on through your work so far? Do you think that's going to continue, or is there some sort of other direction you want to work in?
There's always the core, and then there's the new curiosity, and it starts its own kind of research. So, I'm really interested in the problem of meaninglessness and nihilism. So many people that are drawn it, whether it's incels or suicides or people who've given up on life. So I think we have a real problem with that in society, how we orientate ourselves without life narratives. So the next book's really got to dip into that. I think it's going to be some pretty dark stuff.
I mean, nothing's going to exaggerate that more than the current situation we're in. I mean, there's been a lot of people with mental health issues really sort of exposed during this time. So are you going to sort of, I know researching something is vital for a good story, but do you attempt to tap into that some way? And how would you deal with that without kind of bringing back those emotions too much for someone perhaps?
Well, I guess writers are kind of sadists in a sense that we don't mind upsetting readers. We just have to, and we have to kind of upset ourselves a bit when we're writing. It sounds a bit slushy for a bloke, but I know when I've reached a good conclusion for a book, because I'm crying as I write it. So, because you got that sort of symphony of themes and characters, and it all just goes, oh, it could only have been this way. Oh, it's beautiful. And it's sort of, a good ending for a book, it really writes itself, and you're just sort of witness to it. So I think it's important to sort of use your own emotions as you're writing, but not to be overwhelmed by them. Absolutely. So it's that sort of balancing act.
Yeah, Ewan, I was going to take you back to 2013. So you're there and you're writing a pandemic book and you've got a different pandemic in mind. Bear in mind everything you've said about the paranoid element in your characters and to some extent yourself. How did you react when the pandemic started to occur, knowing obviously how your characters are and how your mind works? Did you, at any point, did you think, whoa, it's just a bit too close to home?
Well, I mean, The first
dug half a bunker out the back already.
That's right. Yeah, the first. Well, we had a little attempt at prepping about 3 or 4 years ago, because we were shit scared of what we thought would be the peak oil collapse. That was the thing we were really worried about, because it seemed like a big thing before they discovered vast tranches of oil off Venezuela and in the Gulf of Mexico, and how to make oil out of tar sands and all the rest of it. So actually, the book started off about a peak oil collapse and oil running out, and civilization grinding to a halt. So it just sounds immoral to say I was horribly shocked, horribly disappointed that my apocalypse didn't come true. And so the book sort of sat around for a couple of years until the pandemic struck. And then it was basically my wife and I were watching TV, and I think it was a CNN report, and said there have been 6 deaths in China of a new SARS-like virus. And we looked at each other and we went, where's that folder of research we've got from American Blackout? And seriously, within 2 weeks, we'd moved to our little hideaway place with several hundred cans of beans. So it was really helpful.
As far as I got was putting a few bottles of water in the garage. That was about as far as I got.
I know, we're all sort of amateur preppers, really.
Oh, amazing. Well, do you know what?
I can almost see in the future, like, do you know, like, Dean Kootz's novel, when they were like, he predicted this. I can almost see him in the future, like Ewan Morrison actually predicted COVID. Like, he was planning for it years in advance.
Yeah.
Well, if there's another pandemic after this one, then I'm sorry to say you'll have to have me back on the show as Nostradamus. Thank you.
Yeah, definitely.
Well, weirdly enough, I started writing this random short story about a blackout. It was called Blackout, about just all the technology and stuff dying in London, just complete chaos. And then I found this podcast that was Rami Malek it was an audio drama called Blackout about the exact same thing in America. I was like, what's just happened?
Yeah.
So they're quite popular.
I think it's in the air, though. I think I think it's part of the consumer thing. It's like we think we've got it so good, really.
Yeah.
I mean, this must be a house of cards that comes crashing down.
There's kind
of consumer guilt or something. Yeah.
Absolutely.
So, Ewan, we have a couple of staple Rankin Community Chat Show questions, because, like, unbelievably, we're halfway through the show already, so we need to get these out there. But the first one is, if you could take any character from fiction and make them your own and have a go at writing that character, taking them on a narrative, writing a novel, creating a film, which character would you pick and why?
Oh, that's horrible. Can I have the second question? I'll come back to the first one.
You can, but you might not like that either. Okay. The second question is, if you could change the ending to anything, TV, film, literature, what ending would you change and why?
Oh my God, it must be Game of Thrones. Everyone says Game of Thrones, don't they?
Pretty much.
Yeah, a lot of people do.
Everyone says Game of Thrones. What? I mean, it was, there's this old thing in film writing. It's an old joke. So it's the scriptwriter who reaches the end of a story and he goes, oh God, I don't know what to do. I don't know what to do. So he goes to his typewriter and he goes, suddenly a lot of shots rang out and everyone fell down dead. The end, And that was basically what happened with Game of Thrones. That was tragic.
My boys finished Sons of Anarchy last night. And have you seen that?
No.
Oh, okay, I won't say much. But the ending of that, again, you would think that it felt very, very lazy. And you think with a show that's been made for so long, how do you get to an end of a show that's been so loved and so adored and just make it rubbish? Not that it's rubbish. It's not rubbish. It's just not what...
there are these problems with just serialization. I mean, I remember Mad Men went to like 2 or 3 seasons beyond that, which... it could have been. I remember turning to my wife at one point and saying, what's the plot on this season? And she said, oh, here's the characters you love doing some more shit again. I mean, that was just it. And other series that have gone off the rails as well. I think that's a big one. I was very disappointed with what happened to Westworld. It started out so well. If they just stopped.
Homeland was another one. It just kind of fizzles out, and there's loads of them. They just seem to get to a point where you think perfect ending there, but because there's an audience, they keep making it, and it could be very detrimental.
Indeed.
So, Ewan, we'll give you some more time to think about the character question. So I'll ask
Skillfully evaded it. Do you see that?
Yeah.
Yeah. So we have a bit of a morbid question as well, and that morbid question is: you're on your deathbed, and you're looking back at your writing career. What would you be happy with? What is success to you?
I think the last 2 books, really, because I've learned to trust my intuition a lot more, and the intuition's a much more powerful force than my reasoning. So I think with the earlier books, I would overplot and I would over worry about things, and with a sort of heightened trust of intuition, things remarkably, I mean, as long as it lasts, things seem to work themselves out in a much more fluid way. So I think the last 2 books, I think people have seen the difference. They're much more humane and open and funny and unexpected. And in a sense, it's gone from like trying to be in control of everything to sort of sitting back a bit and letting it happen and enjoying it a bit more. So that I would be happy if I got struck by lightning tomorrow. Maybe not a bus, but yeah.
Yeah. Fantastic. Right, I've got a couple of I've got 3 facts, survival facts, because I thought stick to the theme. Let us know if you've heard these or would have any sort of alternative to this. But one of them is every part of a dandelion, from the flower to the stem to the root, is edible. Did you know that?
Yeah, dandelion soup and all kinds of nettle soup. And it's kind of it's a friendly relative of chamomile tea.
Wow.
I wouldn't want to eat a dandelion. Don't a lot of cats piss on them?
I think they just taste like that anyway.
Yeah, pretty much.
Although I'm not sure how I know that. But,
it's a good point. Okay, the second one, it says, if you're in a car and to confirm someone's following you, take 4 right turns. If they follow you around the block, call for help or drive to somewhere busy. Anyone ever done that? 4 right turns. It's a bit... I'm pretty sure.
I've done 3 round the block swiftly walking.
Yeah. I've gone around a roundabout a few times just out of, for fun. But
My wife
turned a corner.
My wife, when she came to Britain for the first time, she came from Australia, where they drive like Italians and Mad Max put together. So I used to joke that she would drive one hand on the steering wheel and the other one out the window like this. Yeah. And I just said to her, you can't do that in Britain. You know, you really can't. So she was followed by people who she gave the finger to.
Wow.
On a few occasions, really incensed Glaswegian men, usually.
I bet, yeah. Did she turn right 4 times to evade them, or
she just drove fast as hell? Really,
that leads lovely on to our next one, which is: if you ever accidentally disturb a beehive or wasp's nest and are being swarmed, do not run for water. Anyone know why?
I have no idea why. Do you have an answer? Although I did get rid of a wasp's nest quite recently, breaking all the rules. So I got a very long stick, hit it very hard, and ran. and that was, that was the first don't do on the list. So why not run for water?
Okay, so it seems like jumping in water will keep the bees off you, but actually, apparently, they will wait for you and sting you when you come back up. So the alternative is, which is what you probably did, was run as fast and as far away as you can.
Yes.
Because they're territorial and won't leave their home for a certain range.
Wow.
Behind a locked door, yes, definitely.
To be fair, I don't think that would have been my first instinct to run in a river or a lake or anything of that kind. I think run far away is probably the natural one, isn't it?
Yeah.
It's just a strange scenario where there's a beehive near a lake anyway.
Yeah, that's true.
I'm not sure. Anyway, this is the time we'll go in the second half of the show because we are pushing on. We're going to introduce a new family member, and this has been a thing of confusion very much so recently, Ewan. Basically, we introduced someone that follows us on Twitter who is perhaps not have many followers, that we give them a bit of a following boost by posting a GIF, an animated social media GIF. And a few guests, including Mr. Ian Rankin, who commented on your, reviewed your book, sent someone a physical gift and not a GIF, which is fantastic. But also hilarious.
Small Scottish language barrier there. Yeah, that's good.
Well, and it was
John Niven last week.
John Niven, also Scottish, and got confused.
Yeah.
So disclaimer.
May I say, with the
I may have to send a gift as well, just to keep, you know, to keep the tradition going. Yeah.
But with Scottish people that have confused GIF for gift, they have been very generous and instantly looked for a gift to send without any prompting or any sort of prior prompting. So yeah,
so
the Scottish are giving people.
Disclaimer: do you know what a GIF is?
I do know what a GIF is, yes, but I'm worried though that you're going to ask me for a gift with a T that's in my room at the moment.
Not at all, not at all. We'll play the introduction and then I'll announce who that person is, and we'll send them a GIF without a T.
Yeah.
So, this person has got a really silly name. Not a silly name, that's very harsh. But a silly Twitter name, because I'm going to have to try and read this out to you people. But ACM at MA Andy, MA Andy, one word, _ACM. Humanized alien, this is what the bio says. Speak Spanish, Spanglish in fact. Daydreamer, Wonderland, Veggie Lover, Dance for Hobby, Write for Peace of Mind. That person only has 75 followers. Can we send her a GIF? Ewan, what GIF should we send them? What could be on that theme of GIF?
A friendly GIF.
Well, it doesn't have to be friendly at all. We've had very bizarre GIFs in the past.
I saw a really cool GIF recently that I would just give to anyone. So it was of a sunset on water, quite cliched, but hey ho, and it was and then it just erupted into a splash backwards.
Okay.
And it just looked fantastic. And
it's a very specific GIF.
Yeah, I like that one. It's not got a message other than just awesomeness happens.
So if you could find that person, send them a GIF along those lines and say, welcome to the show, whatever you want to do, and give them a follow so they have more than 75 followers. It would be lovely.
Great.
So while they're doing that, Ewan, is there an author that you really like that you could recommend to the community?
I have a soft spot for Miranda July, to be honest. I know she's very popular, a bit kooky and eccentric, and she makes kind of crazy films as well. But I love her short stories. I mean, she writes the best short stories.
Fantastic.
The most eccentric. Well, it was one fantastic short story about giving swimming lessons to old people in an old folks' home without just on the carpet. You know,
wow.
Yeah, Miranda July.
Okay, so what we'll do now is we'll get on to the questions. We kind of bunch these videos up in one little go, don't we, Chris? If you've got a question for Ewan, please, or us, please send them in now, and we will finish the show off in the next 15 minutes or so with your questions. So get them in, and we will ask them. We'll pop them on the screen, if they're clean enough, and we'll get those done. Okay, so the first question, Anya Pavil, thank you for your question. Is there any situation you are not confident about surviving?
Yeah. I mean, being stuck in a city when there's a civilizational collapse is hell. Just the idea that suddenly everybody is competing for all the same things. I mean, we get these scares over toilet roll. Imagine what it's like when there's no water.
Yes.
Yeah.
So get the hell out of Dodge, basically.
Yeah, I mean, the toilet roll thing was crazy. I remember when I actually got my hands on some toilet roll, we were leaving the car and we had quite a few valuable things in the car, but we hid the toilet roll under the seat because we thought the toilet roll is probably going to be the first thing to go.
I have to admit,
isn't that crazy?
I did the same thing, you know.
Yep.
But of all things that we need to survive, toilet roll is not one of them.
Well, I mean, that's true. I mean, and if you were French up to about 50 years ago, you would have thought toilet roll was disgusting because you have other ways of cleaning your bottom, you know?
Well, there you go. A bidet.
A bidet.
A bidet. Yeah, that would have solved many issues during that pandemic. I don't know.
Indeed.
I think, you know, hiding under the water from some bees would be quite a difficult situation to get out of. I don't know. Cool. Thank you, Anya. Jodie Cook, what would you tell us to make sure was in our apocalypse survival backpack that we made not think to include? That's a great question.
It's a really good one. Reading glasses for me. Because when you have your survival pack, it's all really tightly packed, and all the writing instructions are really small. So imagine having all your first aid and your blanket and your water sterilizing tablets and all the instructions and being completely unable to read anything.
That's a good point.
That is a good point.
What about you, Chris? What would you put in there?
Do you know what? I've never really thought about it. So,
well, what do you think about
massively
that?
Underprepared I am.
Ewan, if you took your reading glasses and there was space just enough for one of those books off the bookshelf behind you, which one book would you throw in there?
This is a really good question. It really depends on the severity of this civilizational collapse, because there's a thing in the book where the kids realize that the books that they've got in the lockdown in the bunker with them could be the only 5 books left in the world, and one of them's a car manual, and another one is a rip off of 50 Shades of Grey, and they're like, why didn't we think of this better? Like should we have had the Bible or Dante's Divine Comedy? So it really depends. I would probably stick with a really seriously good home doctor manual, Where There Is No Doctor is a brilliant book, and it was originally created for African communities that had no healthcare at all. And apart from the really gory pictures of home surgery, is brilliant. Yeah,
fantastic. It's a very good answer. Lalai says, "Oh no, thanks for stopping by. What is your favourite and least favourite apocalyptic tropes from David Middleham?"
That's a really brilliant question, isn't it? I got a real problem with one person saves the world as just like a trope, and it's an apocalyptic trope, and it's all riddled through lots of sci-fi and Star Wars and stuff as well. It's like it's like, Neo is the one. I'm like, well, Neo's an anagram of one, and like everyone should have worked that out like really early on. I think it's a kind of Jesus narrative that's filtered down through atheist and secular culture. So many of these tropes are, apocalyptic tropes are, someone's going to save us from the apocalypse. It's going to have to be this one person. Not a fan of that one.
Yeah. Mario says, was Chris aiming the clean comment at you? Yes, Mario was. Keep it clean. Okay. Let's have a look. If you've got any more questions, guys, send them in. I can't see any in the chat there a minute. But I've got some random ones just before, in case anyone else sends them in. What would you name your boat if you had one? Have you got a boat?
We thought about having a boat for a while because we live near a loch, which is a lake if you're American. So what would I name my boat? I'd probably just go for something really discreet. Like they're all named after, in Scotland, they're all called things like hope and endeavor and venture. I'd just pick one of those kind of goofy words so as not to stand out too much, Did
you see that? They did like a survey in Britain and said, you can name this boat anything you like. And we would, put up to vote and we'll pick the answer. And they came up with Boaty
McBoatface. Yeah,
and that was the actual answer people gave in their thousands. Yeah.
I wouldn't like to be the sign painter that had painted that on the side of the boat, though.
Fantastic. I don't know, Chris, what would you call your boat? Anything specific?
No, but I was thinking it with you and maybe the S&S, survival at sea, perhaps. Survival at sea. Just surviving.
Okay.
But yeah.
But then again, people might think you're from the SAS.
That's true. But that's a good element to have, because then they might leave you alone.
All the drug dealers on the boat speeding away from Chris Hooley.
Yeah.
It'd be kind of funny if it was a rowboat with SAS written in it.
It's a really old SAS boat. Yeah. What's the most useless talent you have?
Probably still being able to make really incredibly detailed plasticine models.
That isn't a useless talent. That's quite a cool talent. I mean,
hold on.
Morph came from somewhere, right?
Hold on, I'm going to show you something. Okay, it took me 30, 40 years to gravitate from plasticine to clay, but that's Friedrich Nietzsche.
Wow.
There he is.
That's fantastic.
Oh, that's well cool.
Grumpy face and everything. I don't know what to do with it, so
How long does that take you to do?
I was about a day, actually. That was all.
Well, if you ever want a job, we can pay you for this. If you made a Chris and Chris statue, we would gladly pay you for it.
There we go.
There you go. A bit of work for lockdown for you.
Beards are really hard to do.
Don't worry about that. Okay, last one there, and we'll see the chat again. If magic was real, don't shout me if you love magic and think it's real, and you could use only one spell, what spell would you use?
I think I'd just go for the tricky, obvious one of like, give me an infinite number of magic spells to have. So because I couldn't possibly make up my mind if someone said. I mean, you'd have to have like a time limit on that question, wouldn't you? Like you've got 30 seconds to tell me what spell's going to be. You get to 29 seconds and you go, oh, I'll just have an infinite number of spells, please.
I don't know. Invisibility. I think.
No, it's a bit young man, that one.
Yeah, that's the pervert's choice.
It really is.
I was thinking more like rob a bank and not be seen, but you know, if you want to go that route, Chris, you're more than welcome. Oh dear.
So, question you, and if you could decide any conspiracy that was proven to be true, so anyone that's out there, and you picked it and it was right, which one would you pick?
Well, can I just paraphrase that with there's some amazing conspiracy theories out there which are just mad.
Yeah, let us know some good ones.
Okay, like atomic bombs don't exist.
Okay.
It was all just a hoax. The moon is a hologram. Is another one.
A hologram.
Yeah. Of course, there's the flat Earth thing.
Kind of like a Batman light. Just
yeah.
Okay.
I guess I'd like to. I would like to see what the fallout would be in the world if it was proven that we'd never been to the moon and that we can't actually go anywhere in space. Because I think that would be, it would have huge impact on how we frame the way we think about the world and each other. If there's no possibility of escape from this planet that we're all going to die on in 2 billion years' time.
Well, on the news today, I think they actually announced that I think Russia and Japan, maybe, or Russia and China, were actually going to team together to build this space station on the moon.
Can you imagine how?
That
God, yeah. I mean, but we're built for living here. You know, it's just hell on Earth, hell off Earth. You know, to not be on Earth. It's your body starts to go to pieces after about 6 months.
I'm pretty sure we've all seen Alien as well. So I mean,
soft spot for Alien, yeah.
Yeah, so maybe not. Don't go near eggs if you go there. I'm just saying, stay away from the eggs. Okay, Jody says, "What is your ultimate writing tip for a fresh newbie writer?"
Take a notepad with you everywhere, and make sure it's not a digital one. So pen and paper.
Why do you say not a digital one?
Because you'll get distracted by all your notifications. I think probably the main thing is try to live without anyone telling you you're great for 6 months as well is a good thing. And that might mean turning off. One of the things with kids, I've seen this with my teenagers, is these constant fix of stimulus and support of like, my daughter's kids, my daughter's friends, sorry, she's only 18, so she doesn't go to kids, are always giving each other like, wow, you look awesome, wow, you're superb, blah, 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 blah. And it just becomes this daily top up of ego stuff. I think that's really in the way of getting into the creative zone where you go through self-doubt. You have to face self-doubt to be able to be creative.
I think that's a very, very serious issue that's going to be very apparent in the next sort of decade or so. That, sort of filters and all of these things that young kids, especially girls right now, talk about Women's Month and stuff. This must be sort of explored more. That they're so unconfident about their actual self. It's like constantly putting this picture out of their perfected imagery or whatever. And to go and meet someone and speak to them must be terrifying. Like a job interview, for example, when they spend all their teens' time in school putting these filters up to actually go and sit in front of a professional, it must be a terrifying experience.
Well, I think we're losing track of long-term things. So long-term investment in making myself a good something or other. I can be a really crap guitar player in 2 months of trying and get absolutely nowhere, but all my friends tell me I'm amazing.
Yeah.
You know, on social media, it would be much better for me to go, do you know what? It's going to take me 8 years to get really, really as good as I want to be. And I better just keep my ass off social media in the meantime as I practice my licks and my hammer-ons, you know?
Nice. So, Ewan, you've created obviously a fictional world that's not too distant in the future, but obviously as someone who's a parent with children as well, and, you know, possibly grandchildren in the future, what are your fears about the world in, let's say, 100 years' time?
That's a really good question. I think we faced the big tech problem, really, of how far we're going to go down the AI thing, and how far that's going to lead into social engineering, and you know, I think there's experimental technology in China just now, which is already looking a lot like a dystopia. It was, in fact, there was a Black Mirror episode about this very subject, you know, which is that we rate each other's behavior all the time. And you actually get currency from doing that, from pleasing other people and all the rest of it. So the flip side of that is really a totalitarian surveillance society that we would enter consensually, because we love using our social media and we like getting extra points and extra status. So really, I'm a bit worried about that. Also, you know, we could probably do with not doing too many experiments on viruses for a while, and just maybe being really, really cautious about viruses rather than investing billions in trying to create new ones.
That's a worrying thing. I think we're very sheltered to what actually is going on, and if the news, you know, the truth was to come about how fragile we really are, then, you know, it could be a scary time.
I think, you know, the things to be worried about though are very big things, and they're really to do with things that government and big tech and big pharma are up to.
So, Ewan, as well, you mentioned about that fear of like life being meaningless and having that fear that you're essentially wasting your life. Do you think a lot of people have that fear now more than ever? And what would your advice be to them? Because obviously, if you've been in this situation before where you've decided, you know, what do I need to do to give myself some meaning? What would your advice be to them?
That's a brilliant question. It's such a huge thing. So I suffer from probably annual depression. Once a year, I go through a period of depression, and I don't know if it's chicken and egg on this one. Are you depressed because life seems meaningless, or does life seem meaningless because you're depressed? But I know so many people who struggle to put together a narrative to live for. And there was a great sociologist who talked about this by the name of Zygmunt Bauman. He's dead now, but he talked about the collapse of the life narrative in the last 10 to 15 years, and how actually consumerism tries to encourage you to only think in the short term. So you're thinking in terms of short-term fixes rather than long-term plans. I think it's really horrible to say, but I think the solution to meaninglessness is to invest and commit in something really big that's going to take a long, long time to pull off, whether that's, you know, a community or some technology or raising a family or inventing something or writing a series of books, or just, you know, to try and have a goal that's like a good 10 years long. I think it just creates a sort of a straight road that you can stick to, and all of those bumps of depression and meaninglessness, you can just put those to the side as you crack on with your big project. But, you know, I think we're really dealing with a kind of plague of meaninglessness just now. It's horrible, especially for younger people. Millennial generation are really struggling with this, and I think, you know, you young folk, you know, have been sold a bunch of false promises about this whole life under modern consumerism as well. It's not rewarding to, you know, have technology move so fast that you're made redundant and your skills have to be updated every 3 or 4 years. It's pretty hellish. And I think one of the results of that is that millennials are not making those big long-term commitments, like having kids and you know, planning a family and all that stuff, which I have to say is pretty damn good thing to do.
So Ewan, just on the topic of depression, because I'm aware that obviously we've touched on it, and then there may be some people watching out there now that are experiencing it or are experiencing it themselves. What was it like the first time you went through it? And I say got through the other side, but I don't mean it in that respect, because obviously it's not as easy as that. But what advice do you give yourself now, having been through it multiple times, like you said?
Well, I think I used to have deep anxiety with depression, so panic attacks with depression. So getting a handle on the panic attacks is really, really important, because they can lead you to doing crazy stuff and dangerous stuff and putting yourself in danger, which has all happened to me. So I have a little mantra whenever I'm panicking, something that was taught to me by a Buddhist therapist. In fact, he was the therapist who secretly said, I'm giving up this therapy job, but secretly I'm a Buddhist. I'll teach you something quick and I'll be much better than years of therapy. So he said, whenever you feel panicky, look out the window and what do you see? And I said, well, there's nothing much. There's a tree moving in the wind and there's a car passed. And he said, so nothing much is happening, is it? And I said, not really. And he said, well, do you feel there's a lot happening in you just now? And I was like, yeah, I'm just so agitated and terrified and everything's going to go wrong and my life and everything. He goes, just focus on the window and tell yourself, when you look outside, nothing is happening. You go, nothing is happening. And then once he said, you'll get used to that, then tell yourself, nothing needs to happen. And this is just, I teach this to people who have panic attacks, and it really works. So, you know, then you got the longer thing about depression. How to stop yourself falling into depression. Watch out for just the dark draw of depression. It will lead you to do things like, whenever I feel myself getting depressed, there's certain books I'll go to which will make me even more depressed. So I should have them padlocked by now. Or know that whenever I go near those books, Thomas Ligotti, you know, is one of those guys who goes to the bottom of the darkness. And if I'm feeling slightly depressed, I have to stay away from those kind of writers.
Yeah, I think that's a really good tip. Chris, I think you're muted.
Oh, I said that's a fantastic answer. Thank you very much. And I said I do the same with music as well. Certain things like in the same mindset that you're feeling a bit low, but go to the same music, which drags you down further. So it's recognizing that and talking about it is a massive, massive asset. So never be alone with that. As hard as it might feel and you want to isolate yourself, definitely share. Right.
And sorry, Chris, I was just going to say, obviously, if you are going through that, we are the Rankin Community Chat Show. We are a community of authors. So don't hesitate to get in contact with us. We're always open to have a chat.
Absolutely. Ewan, before we do wrap up, because we're over our time now, where can people find your work? If you've got a website, what's the best place to find it?
Yeah, it's just myname.com. So it's ewanmorrison.com.
I would love to find literally myname.com.
I just have to spell out Ewan because there's so many different spellings of Ewan. E-W-A-N Morrison, 2 R's. Yeah.
Fantastic.
EwanMorrison.com. Or you can find me on Twitter under Mr. Ewan Morrison. And we have quite a lot of fun there.
Yes, certainly. We will leave descriptions, links and descriptions in the chat show, in the notes for the podcast and the video. So if you want to find out those links very quickly, just click on them there. But Ewan, thank you so much for coming on. You've some fantastic answers for us here, and we've absolutely loved every second of it, and it's flown by. I'm sure everyone has enjoyed it and the comments will be flying in. Please check out How to Survive Everything and pick that book up because, you know, we need to support the authors on the show. I would say support the authors that support the show, but that's me, so ignore that one. You all know about that anyway. Ewan, thank you very much, and I hope that you enjoy the rest of your week. And guys, join us on Friday. Tina Baker's coming on, and that's going to be a very interesting show, I can tell you. So look after yourselves, guys. We've touched on a few real important subjects tonight, and like Chris said, we are here for you guys if you need it. And definitely lean on us all, ask us questions, anything like that, by all means do so. Stay safe, and we will see you on Friday.
Yeah, go buy Ewan's book. Bye.
Bye. Thank you.
Cheers, guys.
That would be great.
Bye.
Thanks very much.